I did just put out an article with the Center for Media and Democracy about a lawsuit that is ongoing. And there's a lot of talk about this because The Intercept sort of touched on it in a recent story about the Biden administration's efforts to combat misinformation online. Right. And all of the sort of revelations, I guess, we can call them revelations, about in that story sort of come from this lawsuit, which is being brought by two Republican states attorneys general in Louisiana and Missouri. And joining the lawsuit are a number of individuals who have spread COVID misinformation online, very prominent spreaders of COVID misinformation. And they're being represented by a law firm, or a litigation group, I should say, called the New Civil Liberties Alliance. Now, the New Civil Liberties Alliance is a benignly named litigation group that gets about half of its funding from Charles Koch's influence network. It has fought against the CDC's eviction moratorium. It fought against the EPA's authority to regulate greenhouse gases. It's represented several Koch-backed organizations in the past, including Americans for Prosperity, which is Charles Koch's flagship operation. So it consistently fights on the side of big business. Like, this is a legal pit bull for Charles Koch's interests. The cases that it chooses cases very carefully. It represents its work it does it pro bono, and these lawsuits, they are strategic lawsuits. Now, the story about basically what's happening with the Biden administration, let's start here, is that they are trying to combat online misinformation during a pandemic. They're also trying to combat election misinformation and disinformation, seeing it as a threat to democracy. Now, these efforts do go back to the Trump administration, and they have continued under Biden. And what they amount to essentially is the administration working with social media companies to flag content and say, hey, this is misleading content. Will you take it down? Can you not disseminate this? And social media companies have been pretty reluctant to work with the administration, but they have taken some content down, thus the lawsuit. So that's really the extent of the efforts. They're not being compelled. There's no threat there's no regulation. Congress hasn't acted. The president hasn't taken any executive orders to compel cooperation from these companies. So my article examines the case. The suit is Missouri v. Biden. And I look at the case and I look at sort of the actors behind it. A couple of the plaintiffs being represented by the New Civil Liberties Alliance are, unsurprisingly, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Dr. Martin Kulldorff, two of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, which I know that you've heard me talk about before, because the Great Barrington Declaration was a document that recommended governments eschew broad mitigation strategies in favor of what they deem focused protection for very vulnerable communities. It's sort of nebulously defined, but really get everything back to work and let natural immunity be the path to herd immunity. Now, this document does not represent a mainstream view of what we should do in the face of the pandemic. The public health community was pretty alarmed by this. This is a novel virus with uncertain a lot of unknowns, a lot of unknown long-term effects. And you just let that rip through the population. It could have unforeseen consequences. And in public health, you have the precautionary principle that says you should err on the side of caution. So that's the lawsuit. They are bringing this lawsuit because some of their content online, where they have downplayed the seriousness of the virus, said that masking doesn't work, which is not what the body of evidence shows. They've played footsie with the anti-vax movement. Like that's who's bringing this lawsuit. And that's the kind of information that the Biden administration is asking social media companies, asking to remove. So that's what the article is about. It's in the Center for Media and Democracy, exposed by CMD.
We're speaking with Walker Bragman of Opt Out News. I do think when it comes to
I know that was long.
Well, I'm sorry. Oh no,
I know that was
long. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, the whole thing start with the beginning with the name of it. Like, it just sounds wrong. Like, whenever I hear groups like that, I know that that's not right.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Anyway, what I was trying to say, I don't even know what I'm saying. That's live podcasting for you. What I was going to say is one of the big problems with masking is that it's not that masks don't work. It's that only certain masks work. And the N95 mask in particular, which is considered the standard mask for which we need, is not a mask that everybody is obviously able to get their hands on and is obviously using. When we're using these cloth masks, obviously that's not really effective. But what would be sort of your idea solution regarding people being able to have access to the type of masks that really would prevent the spread, not just of COVID, but just diseases in general? Like, as far as I'm concerned, one thing that I've always noticed, especially when you travel and oftentimes when you're on an airplane, that's probably the one place where you really should be wearing a mask, because that's where things tend to travel the easiest. And if people were wearing the proper mask, I bet there would be not just a COVID, it would be just sickness in general would be cut down significantly.
Yeah, so we do know that masking, it does reduce transmission, although certain masks are much more protective than others. As you mentioned, the N95s are very protective. KN95s work as well. Really, the high quality masks are what we should be doing. I think that the federal government should not only be producing these masks. I think it should be distributing to everybody, and obviously requiring them for public transportation and air travel. That does frustrate sort of business interests that have opposed masking. The Koch network did mobilize and to combat mask mandates and get this to combat sort of the public health response from the CDC. So yeah, basic things now are politicized. I'm sure that there are going to be people in your comments who look at this and say, well, the masking doesn't work, and that's what I've heard, and so screw this and screw you. And
we've got a very libertarian
sort of a religion for people.
Well,
we have a very wide spectrum of people.
We do,
which I like.
I do.
It's everywhere. It could be even my own audience is there. It's a mixed bag, but you get like, people have gotten very attached to these positions, and unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation out there that's been spread deliberately by motivated actors. That's harming people. I mean, the body of evidence supports masking. The body of evidence supports mitigation policies and doesn't have, we talk about harms. There's dubious evidence to show harms for things like masking. So people can calm down. Sorry.
Well, here's where most people actually do agree, believe it or not, is on universal health care. Now, how much of a difference do you think the pandemic would have been if we had universal health care? Because I do think a lot of the reasons why people do not actually are not really willing to do anything is because of the lack of trust in government. And I don't blame them, because our government is captured by corporate special interests. But if we had a universal healthcare system, that would change things significantly. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Medicare for all is an obvious solution. One of the recommendations that the World Health Organization put out immediately when the pandemic hit was remove cost barriers to care. We live in a country now where people go without needed care. The population is less healthy, more vulnerable to this virus because we don't have, people don't have access to preventative care. They have to balance costs. They have to make considerations like, do I want to pay for a doctor visit, or am I going to be able to afford rent this month? Like, that's that's not good. But yes, mistrust of government has been high. Really, it's been high since the 1970s. I mean, the Watergate scandal plummeted. Watergate in Vietnam really crushed the public faith in government, and it has never recovered.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.